time I look at you, I don't understand why you let the things you did get so out of hand. You'd have managed better if you had it planned. Now why'd you choose such a backwards time in such a strange land? If you come today, you could have reached your whole nation. Israel in 4 BC had no mass communication. Did she get me wrong? 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 Only wanna know. Only wanna know. Only wanna know. Only wanna know. Tell me what you think about your friends at the top. Now who'd you think beside yourself was the pick of the crop? Buddha, was he where he's at? Is he where you are? Did Muhammad move a mountain or was that just PR? Did you read the dialogue that was that a mistake? Or did you know your messy death would be a record breaker? Did you get me wrong? Did you get me wrong? Wrong? Don't you get me wrong? Only wanna know. Only wanna know. Only wanna know. Yes, I only wanna know. Come on, come on, come on. Tell me, Jesus, what's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. Thank you guys. We are Jesus Christ Superstar, and we've been performing this weekend here at FMCT. Come check us out. Good morning. Good morning and welcome everyone to 1 Million Cups Fargo. This is the largest 1 million cups in the United States. Let's give it up for our friends from the Fargo Moorhead Community Theater that are performing this weekend. Jesus Christ Superstar! 1 Million Cups is a platform powered. Hey! Random act of sport. We're doing table flipping here today at 1 Million Cups. 1 Million Cups is a platform powered by the Kauffman Foundation. The idea is to bring entrepreneurs and innovators into our communities to share their ideas and giving all of us the ability to support their efforts, to think about ways to improve their ideas, to move them forward faster into our community. Today is a very special 1 Million Cups. It's during TEDx Week. TEDx Fargo is a platform that's about ideas we're spreading. TEDx Fargo is tomorrow. It is sold out. We have over 2,000 people that are going to be there. And there are 50 events happening in the community that are bringing in the TEDx speakers, like today where we'll have Anelia speak for an opportunity to share their ideas into the community. One of the things that we love to do here at 1 Million Cups is to provide an opportunity for announcements and special guests. So I want to introduce Scott Meyer from North Dakota State University on stage to let us know what he's up to this week and who his guests are. So let's welcome to the stage Scott Meyer.
Thank you. All right. I have the privilege of running an entrepreneurship center, but I'm not the only one. We're gathering around 35 people from mostly the Dakotas and Minnesota yesterday and today who all run entrepreneurship centers. So if you are here for the Ecosystem Centers Conference, raise your hand nice and high. Welcome these people when you see them. And they try to help entrepreneurs in their own communities. So you can learn what they're doing in Jamestown, in Vermilion, in Minneapolis, in Mankato, and places in between. So thanks for having us and for showcasing Fargo.
Thank you, Scott. One of the things we do is have announcements. So if I could introduce Aaron from Front Street to give an update on an upcoming event. Let's welcome to the stage an entrepreneur, Aaron.
Good morning. So I'm Aaron from Front Street Tap Room, which is just a couple-minute walk here on Main Avenue. So kind of the mission of Front Street Tap Room is to bring the community together. So we have a number of recurring events that kind of aim at attracting smaller communities within the community at large. For instance, we have for like musicians at our open mic, nerds for trivia, and our board game day, vinyl enthusiasts. We have an event for outdoor kind of sustainability conservation folks. And on Thursdays at 4, we have business and beers. So it's an event we've been doing every week now for over 2 years. We usually get a crowd of 5 to 15 people. It's low-key, kind of show up when you want, leave when you want, just kind of hang out, talk about business. So I know there's a few folks here that come pretty often. So yeah, every Thursday, 4 p.m. It's during happy hour, so beers are cheaper. Save your receipts because it's all tax deductible. And yeah, hope to see you there.
All right, well, thank you, Aaron. Let's welcome to the stage Danny from the Emerging Prairie team. Danny has been up since at least 6 o'clock this morning helping produce TEDx Fargo, but she has an announcement. Let's welcome Danny to the stage.
Hello, everyone. One thing we like to do with Emerging Prairie and the Prairie Den is to have lunch and learns, and we are asking for applications for lunch and learn. So if you have an idea that you think would be a great topic for a lunch and learn, we would love to hear from you. Please contact Jordan. Her email is up there, or you can talk to me afterwards. But we'd love to have you do a lunch and learn with us.
All right. Thank you, Danny. All right, up next, Simone from the Night Bazaar. Let's welcome Simone up. Let's give her a round of applause. Woo!
Hello, everyone. I'm Simone from Folkways, and I would like to let you know and invite you to the official after party of TEDx Fargo, which is Night Bazaar, and that will be at our new venue, 63 5th Street North, just down the street from the Civic Center where TEDx will be taking place. And Night Bazaar is a free community event with food, live music, vendors, live performances, all evening from 5 to 9 p.m. So come check us out. It's the only place that I know of that you can participate in axe throwing, try homemade gelato, get a henna tattoo, get your astrology chart read, all at the same time. So you can really try a little bit of everything at the Night Bazaar. It's family friendly as well, so come on down. It's absolutely free, no tickets, no nothing, so you just show up. It's at the new Farmers Market venue, new Folkways Pop-Up Plaza, so that is 63 5th Street North.
Right across from the Forum, right? Right across from Forum. Thank you, Simone. Let's check that out Thursday night. We want to do a little throwback. So this spring, we had one of our most intriguing speakers, Craig Rupp from Sabanto in town. So I want to introduce Craig. He came onto our stage this spring and said he was going to plant 10,000 acres autonomously. He's back in town this week. Let's hear what he's up to and how it went. Welcome back to the stage, Craig.
Thank you. So an update. So it was May 1st. All right, sorry. May 1st, we embarked, and I will say I was on the south side of Chicago with a whole 1 hour of driving a semi underneath my belt, and I was just amazed at the country we live in, where someone with zero trucking experience can drive 60,000 pounds worth of equipment on I-80 on the south side of Chicago. But we went out on May 1st, and we went to Sac City, Iowa, and we started, when we got there, of course, it was raining, and after about a day, we actually went out, and we stumbled at first. We had equipment issues and communication issues, And so, you know, it took us a couple days to get our act together. And then on May 3rd, we actually, the weather was good, and we actually went out and autonomously planted in Sac City, Iowa. Then we spent a number of days there just hammering away fields. And then one day, I remember I woke up in the back of a semi and looked outside, and it was snowing. So the weather was really hard for us to contend with. But we did a couple more fields, and we picked up, and we went to Nebraska, near Hastings, Nebraska, and autonomously planted a guy by the name of Shane Bristol, his fields out there. We picked up stake, went to Red Oak, Iowa, then planted some river bottoms there, and then went up north to Mankato, Minnesota, and did some fields for Crystal Valley. Then we circled back and went back to Illinois, and we did some farmers' fields there near Champaign, Illinois, and then we ended up back in Indiana. The weather was terrible for us. I think a lot of farmers were saying that this is they haven't seen things like this since 1965. They were rather old farmers. So that was one challenge that we had. Above and beyond the equipment, one thing we learned was just the agronomic practices across in the different regions and how they differ. And then farmers do, I mean, you know, when we were in Sac City, when we went to Nebraska, we were amazed at just the difference in agronomic practices. But it was a lot of fun.
Craig, one quick question, and then we'll send you off. Yeah. How many states, or which states were you the first company to plant autonomously in the field?
Okay, so as far as I know, in an actual farmer's field, I think we were the first in Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, Illinois, and Indiana. So,
thank you for your innovation, Craig. Let's add North Dakota to the list. We also want to invite past speaker Mark Hurlbert from Prime Digital Academy to give a quick announcement. He's in town this week. Let's welcome past 1 Million Cup speaker. And Mark, we've grown since you spoke last. I think you spoke at North Dakota State University. But let's welcome back to the stage Mark from the Twin Cities.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's been great. We've had a good couple of years since I was here last time. We graduated our 52nd cohort in Minneapolis not too long ago. So we have almost 850 alumni, software engineers and user experience designers that are making an impact on the community there. We have people at over 400 companies now, and I'm proud to say that those folks are making, I think, annually a little over $20 million than they were before Prime. So that's putting some better cars in driveways and bigger roofs over people's heads, which is nice. And yeah, we're really excited to be starting to kind of expand our horizons and look at how we can make our impact felt beyond the Twin Cities that we call home, and are excited for future announcements of how we can get involved in other communities, maybe some outside of Minnesota. So,
well, I hope that's good news and foreshadowing. Let's give Mark a round of applause. Thanks for coming back. We do want to celebrate Bremer Bank. Bremer is financially supporting the 50 events around TEDx Fargo this year. Right now, there's an Adaptive Technology Summit happening at Microsoft. There's an Opportunity Zone. We've got several of the folks from Bremer here. If you could just wave, and let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for buying coffee for us this morning. Thank you, Bremer. We also wanted to sell, oh, there they are right here. Can you guys wave? There they are. Very hidden. That's very good. We like that. So the other thing we wanted to celebrate is Click Content Studios. So they are distributing this content across all the digital properties right now as a gift to us and for all of those that can't be there. So big thanks to the team at Click. Emerging Prairie, Kauffman Foundation believe that entrepreneurs drive our economy, and that's why we spend so much effort supporting our entrepreneurs and our risk takers. But we also believe our artists drive our culture. And so today we wanted to bring you a random act of art a Moorhead High native. He's the reigning United States beatboxing champion on his path to a 2020 world victory. Join me in welcoming to the stage Moorhead native, Bloomer. Let's go, Bloomer. Let's give a round of applause.
Okay, so this is totally my normal crowd as a beatboxer. So this is not going to be anything weird for me at all. Yeah, I know what I'm going to do. It's going to be awesome. Really what I'm going to do is present to you my new business plan, but through sound. Okay, make some noise for that. Yeah. Next up.
Let's give it up. One more round of applause for Bloomer. Wow. That was nuts. Whoever needs a speaker with him when you got this guy, you can just jam all night long. That's awesome. Don't even need a battery. All right, so hey, my name's Jake Jornstedt. I'm co-founder and CEO at a company called Bushel. You guys may formerly know us as Myriad Mobile. I'm excited to introduce the next couple speakers, and I'm going to introduce Brian first, but way back when Greg and I worked on Emerging Prairie together in a coffee shop with some crazy ideas, we got this thing off the ground. We didn't know what it was going to become, but a few years back, we started thinking, as Barry challenged us, about what is Fargo's major? What is the state of North Dakota's major? If we were going to declare something that we're potentially the best in the world at, what would it be? And turns out that we had this crazy idea around that same time to maybe put together a farm operation that would be potentially fully autonomous, and we think maybe North Dakota is the best in agriculture technology. Maybe we should be the ones leading the way there. We built a lot of incredible things here over the last 50 or 100 years, from Bobcat to the Steiger tractor to some of the first technology to be out in the field doing some really heavy lifting. So I'm going to have Brian come up. Brian, I'm going to introduce you. He's going to talk about the Grand Farm. So Brian is a Shanley and NDSU grad, so very much a Fargo guy. He spent almost a decade learning and optimizing initiatives as a project manager. He's currently the director of operations at Emerging Prairie and head of the Grand Farm. Looking forward to hearing from you, Brian.
Thanks, Jake. Okay, so the Grand Farm is our community BHAG. Big, hairy, audacious goal. I got that from Craig this morning. We have to be audacious, and it's to build the fully autonomous farm by the year 2025. And like Jake said, it started here at this stage. This is where Barry Batchelor, founder of Apario and Phoenix International, challenged the community. He said, let's declare a major. What would that major be? And so we went into the coffee shops and we started talking, And we had a lot of good ideas, a lot of bad ideas, and some really horrible ideas, but the one that tested out the best was it had to be around advanced agriculture. This is a region in which we're steeped in history, and this is our domain. So as we started to think about that, we started to convene people. We started to bring stakeholders together, and we wanted to test that idea further. And so on July 12th, we met in the Loretta building, and we convened a group of industry leaders, and we said, hey, what would it take for us to build an autonomous farm? We wanted to validate whether or not we had what it took. The next day, Kevin and Stacy Bifford donated our land, 40 acres in South Fargo. That was the validation that we needed in order to get really serious about this. We thought that would be the hardest part of the project, but it became the first part of the project. So what we did is we went into the drawing room and we wanted to look at some of the first major challenges that we wanted to address. Because if you think about it, if we were to get to a fully autonomous farm, there are some conditions that we need to improve. So the first one that really stood out was the fact that by the year 2050, there's going to be 10 billion people that are going to be hungry. That's 2 billion more people than there are right now. You couple that with the added fact that, guess what? More countries are developing, more calories are being consumed. So the whole demand is starting to increase. You take the second challenge is the fact that the farm sizes are getting larger, but there's less people that are farming. There's an aging demographic. Farming is becoming a scarce resource. You take the third challenge a little bit more locally here, it's venture capital. In order to start up businesses, you need to have venture capital in a way in which you can access that risk profile. And the fourth and final one is the workforce. There's about 15,000 jobs in North Dakota that are unfilled. Some people think it could be as high as 30. You take the amount of work that's needed and you take a look at the skills that are going to be required to digitize everything, we're going to need to be able to upskill that. So what we did is we took those 4 challenges, and what we wanted to do is build a strategy around that. And that led us to our 5 pillars around the Grand Farm. The first one is the ecosystem. Your community is only as good as your ecosystem. And what we wanted to do is build off of those strengths. And so if you think about it, our history within this region, we already start with the strong one. But what if we started to map that ecosystem and bring national players in, people like Craig, people like Dot from Regina, organizations that are focused on ag technology, then start connecting with the global area, what you'll do is you'll start to see patterns, and those patterns become collaboration points. Also, you'll start to find gaps. Where those gaps, those become opportunities for new businesses to start and to flourish. Once you have that ecosystem in place, you move into the innovation platform. Critical that you have large organizations, small organizations, the research community, along with the startup and the venture capitalists all working together in a tight paradigm. This way you can have an IP-friendly environment, you can have an infusion of cash, but also you can accelerate those new ideas as they become commercialized as well. That led us to the third one, and this is what people kind of visualize when you think about the Grand Farm, the actual physical space where the farm is going to be located. When we first thought about this, we drew inspiration from the Epcot Center, Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. As a kid, I would go there and I'd be inspired. The original design for the Epcot Center was a place where people could imagine about what the future would look like. And that's what we thought about when we thought about the actual Grand Farm. A place where organizations can come together, students can learn, people can be inspired. But what you do is you think about what the future is in terms of how all these things become interconnected. Our fourth pillar is accelerated learning. How do we upskill the workforce? How do we get ready for the Internet of Things, the digital transformation that needs to take place? How do we get our young people in jobs and skills that they can be successful? My dad worked at a company for 50 years. I worked at a company for 22 years. I guarantee my 2 sons, AJ and Quinn, probably won't have that same level of engagement. And so when you think about that, there's going to be constant disruptions. How do we engage with the universities? How do we engage with code schools, boot camps? How do we get skills in place so that we can be competitive around that? The fifth area that we talked about was policy. And this is where we take a page from the success story up in Grand Forks around the Grand Sky and some of the work that we're doing from a drone standpoint. We have a great advantage here in North Dakota. We have open land. We have great universities. We have an opportunity to test things in a safe environment. And if we do this, we have an opportunity to attract some major players into the area in order to have a test-friendly environment. And this could help influence policy, regulations, especially as we move forward into the autonomous nation. So that's what we did with the Grand Farm. We identified the 5 pillars. These 5 pillars are designed to create the conditions in order to enable the autonomous nation, the ability to put together a farming aspect that could be really targeted towards what we need here in North Dakota. The reason why we're going to be successful is because to do this, it takes a team. We have tremendous support from all levels. Large organizations, companies like Microsoft, Bobcat, I see my Bobcat friends over there, government, federal, state, local, but also the entrepreneurs, the universities. So all these things are going to come together and convene in order for us to be successful. And as I said, the autonomous farm is in 2025, but Jake told me it's going to be in 2023, and I think we can beat that. So thank you, and I look forward to further participation.
Thanks, Brian. Looking forward to some discussion here after. Next up, we've got our second speaker. She's pretty incredible. Anila's from Minneapolis. She's a co-founder and president of Habit Aware. She is a mental health advocate, raising awareness of very common yet unknown conditions such as hair pulling and nail biting. Raise your hand if you have those. I'm going to say I have a nail biting issue. Anybody else want to admit this with me in the room? Make her feel comfortable coming to share with us, yeah? All right, so she, as Habit Aware, was named one of Time Magazine's 2018 Best Innovations. So welcome, Anila, to the stage in Fargo. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Is there a clicker? Thanks. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me here for coffee and 1 million cups. It's pretty exciting. So my name is Anila. I am one of the co-founders of Habit Aware, and I pull out my hair. Hair pulling is a mental health condition, a coping mechanism for stress and anxiety. And for me, it started in my early teens, and I didn't know what it was. And I thought I was really weird and wrong for doing this damage. So I hid it from my family, denying myself the help that I could have gotten back then. A couple of years ago, my husband caught me looking like this. As we were getting ready in the morning, I just didn't get my black eye pencil in time to get the makeup on. And he simply looked at me and said, "Anila, where are your eyebrows?" And in that moment, I shed my baggage, I shed my shame, I shed my secret, and I shared with him my hair pulling disorder. And I explained to him that the reason I hid was because I thought I was wrong, because I was afraid that people would see me as lesser than for doing this damage to myself. But today, I am a different person, and that's thanks to a smart bracelet that we've created, which really just brings awareness to the disorder. Something that I hadn't had all of those years growing up, just pulling kind of subconsciously without realizing it was happening. So while I grew up thinking I was alone in this, the making of our bracelet, Keen, is a team effort. Samir, John, Kirk, and I have the business acumen, the marketing chops, as well as the technical background from software, firmware, and hardware. The 4 of us brought this to life in a matter of a year and a half. Hardware is hard, and somehow we still managed to make it happen. Of course, we had help along the way. We've been recognized by HACS, which is a premier hardware accelerator program. Of course, they were instrumental in us getting off the ground. BFRB.org is the major nonprofit organization, and I was blessed to be the keynote speaker in 2018. And the Minnesota Cup is the largest statewide startup competition, and we were their grand prize winner in 2018 as well. So I grew up thinking I was alone, but the truth is 20 million Americans, you saw some hands raised here today, we are hurting and hiding, not just from hair pulling disorder, but from sister conditions of skin picking and nail biting. And these are the people that we are helping on a daily basis get their lives back. And the way we do that is with Keen, our smart bracelet. We call it a hug on the wrist. You train Keen with our mobile app during a 30-second process to basically record your scanning motion, whether it's looking for that skin imperfection on your cheek or your shoulder or the actual act of biting your nails. That gesture is recorded onto the bracelet, and when it senses a match, it sends a vibration, shifting it from the subconscious to the conscious so that now it's a choice, interrupting that pattern of behavior and allowing you to take stock of what's happening so that you can actually replace the behavior. We've been in market since 2017, and we are delivering on our mission of giving people this power of awareness. We've sold our bracelet to more than 48 countries. We get a 4-star rating from our customers, our Keen family, as we call them. And we have more than 600 treatment professionals that are recommending our product. And this is without clinical validation because we are getting to that all-important step of awareness. We're also seeing real results from our Keen family, where 92% report that they are heightening their awareness, and 84% are saying it's actually helping them reduce the behavior and get their life back. This is probably the quote that I think of, or the story that I think of. We get emails almost daily, but this mom, Mindy, wrote in a couple of months ago and said, "You've changed the trajectory of my son's life because he used to come home and run straight to his room, embarrassed, ashamed, hating himself. And now he comes home and he wants to talk, about his Keen stats." And we're shifting that conversation from shame and blame to compassion and understanding. And that child is now just on a different mark and a different path in life because he doesn't have this hanging over his head anymore. So, as I mentioned before, we have 600 treatment professionals recommending our product, and that's without clinical validation, again, because we're getting to that all-important step of awareness so that people who are actually in therapy can actually now use those strategies. They are aware enough, they are conscious enough, they are able to make the choice to say, oh, let me try that thing that I learned about in therapy, and they're able to get better. And we also are now on that path to clinical validation with research grants from both the NIH, the National Institute of Health, and the National Science Foundation to help us improve our technology and do trials to validate the products. We're super excited about the work that we're doing. A testament to the legitimacy of these behaviors, the severity of the severity of the debilitation that these disorders kind of create for a person suffering from them. As Jake mentioned, we were a Time Magazine Best Invention, which was, again, a testament to the work that we're doing, simply trying to raise awareness of BFRBs in the same way that you know what HIV and diabetes and COPD are without maybe even having someone in your family or without you even, dealing with those issues. You kind of know what they are. We want BFRBs to be known. We want people to come out of that place of hiding so that they can actually start healing. So our goal is not just to stay in this space of BFRBs, but to take that power of awareness to a higher level, to help people with other mental health conditions for which lack of awareness is paramount. We want to be the standard of care for behavior change. Thank you.
Thank you, Anila. Brian, come on up.
Oh, yeah.
All right, get your questions ready, guys. I'm going to start us off with a few. So, Anila, I heard from a little birdie in the corner of my ear to the right of me when I was sitting down that you pitched Mark Cuban last week.
Yes, we did.
Tell us of what it's like to be sharing sort of a vision and an idea like this with somebody like Mark Cuban. Is it intimidating? And tell me how he reacted. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a really awesome experience. So it was more of a pitch for business advice and strategy through one of our investors, which is Backstage Capital. Arlen Hamilton is the LP or the managing director of that fund, and her mission is to support underrepresented founders. So we are part of her community and her mission. And she invited 6 of her companies to meet with Mark Cuban simply to just get business advice. And it was really phenomenal to see him switch from one industry to the next in this 2-hour span of each of us getting 20 minutes to share our story, share our work. And it was just an incredible moment. The man is so smart. and immediately knew each of our pain points and gave us incredible business advice that's going to push all of our businesses forward. Immediately understood what we're trying to do with our gesture detection technology and where it could go, and it was just one of those things where you can't not take an opportunity like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And Brian, here's the question that a lot of people are going to ask, so we're just going to knock it out in the front. Tell me about how the Grand Farm will address the concern of how do you keep the farmer at the center of the goal? How do you keep, we talk about employment and autonomous technology is going to ruin all of our jobs and all of our lives and all this sort of negative view. How do we look at the Grand Farm as a way that's maybe more positive, and what are the potential impacts that are good from this?
Yeah, I think there's two ways that I look at that question. One is when we talk about designing the testing and the prototyping, it's so critical to have the farmer in the middle of it. And the reason for that is they're so familiar with the pain points and what we're trying to solve. It doesn't do us any good to create technology and then force it into an application. What you want to do is create technology out of what that need is. And so when I think about technology and I look at automation, it's going to have really three impacts. The first one is going to change jobs. It's going to make it much more efficient, much more effective. Number two, it is going to impact jobs. Jobs will go away in terms of what they did in the current state to the future state. But the third one is, in order to do those jobs, you're going to need to have the skills and the capabilities. And that's where we need to have that as a competitive advantage. We need to be on the front end of that as opposed to the back end, so we can anticipate what those things are and anticipate what those changes are to get out ahead of those. As far as the farming industry goes, it's amazing how receptive they are to these types of tools, and that's really what they are. They're a new set of tools around it, and it's going to help them make it more efficient, more effective, but also alleviate some of the different pain points that are currently in place right now.
So we've got some mic runners. Raise your hand if you guys have a question. And to follow up with Brian, I think there's another statistic out there. Something like more than 50% of the population of the U.S. when we first built our country was agriculture. And today it's something under 1% of our nation's population is doing all of the agriculture, and at the same time our agriculture practices and production has increased by some incredible percent, right?
Yeah, and I look at Craig Rupp and some of the work that he's doing with the autonomous tractor. I mean, this is a model that I think will bring more people into farming. So my father-in-law, he farms in southern Minnesota, and I'm going to start farming with him because I can. He's got the equipment. And so I'm looking at potentially purchasing some land. And so when you take this and you look at the cost of equipment as that comes down, introducing concepts like farming as a service, it's going to make it more accessible for people to continue farming, but just in a different way.
For sure. I have two questions, one for each of you. Start with Brian. Good to see you on the stage. Talk a little bit more about the land that you have, the land that was donated. You mentioned that earlier. What are the first things you're going to do with that? Is it a test bed? It's a proof of concept, of course. What are some of the first things you're going to do with that land?
Well, how we envision it is going to be in phases. So the first phase is to put the makerspace out there, have a dedicated space where organizations can kind of work together. But when you think about how it evolves, education is going to be a critical component for it. It's got to be an area in which we can excite people around farming, inform them on farming, but also bring a new generation of people into those skills and technologies. We also think that makerspace is going to attract global partners as well. This will be a place for experimentation. We have already the great assets that we had talked about, but it's only going to be able to build upon that. And so we look at that evolving over many, many different years. But the first step is to get the makerspace set up, and then everything else will flow from there.
I guess my next question is for you. You talked about clinical validation of your device, and you talked about a couple of grants. How involved are you in those clinical experiments? Are you getting in touch with scientists or universities, or how is that moving forward?
Absolutely. So with our NIH research grant, we're working with the University of Marquette with, his name is Dr. Doug Woods. He's their Dean of Psychiatry, and he's a well-renowned researcher in this field of trichotillomania. So we're working with his team to do the randomized trial, or sorry, not the randomized, but to do the feasibility trial, kind of a blind study.
We have some more questions here. One from Twitter I'll do while you guys are thinking of what you're going to ask. For you, Anila, what role did the Minnesota Cup play in your journey? And tell us a little bit about what the Minnesota Cup's about.
Yeah, so the Minnesota Cup I think it's 15 years running. Started by two gentlemen that wanted to really just promote and support the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the Twin Cities. And they were instrumental in a couple of different ways. First and foremost, the actual application process in and of itself was like a mini business strategy boot camp. So you had to get a pitch deck ready, you had to get your business plan ready. You really had to, it was helpful because we had, Samir and I as kind of husband and wife and sort of the vision of the company, we had all this stuff in our minds of where we wanted to take the company, but it forced us to get it on paper and to look at that and say, okay, some of this doesn't actually make sense. So, really clarifying that vision. And then as the grand prize winners, we took home probably around $100K in non-dilutive funding to help us with a variety of business expenses. And then thirdly, the help from the PR perspective of getting our story out there, and for me personally, that BFRB awareness, people understanding and learning about and educating themselves on what these disorders are, and kind of having that aha moment, just in the same way I did when I was in my 20s, Googling, why am I pulling out my hair, and finding the medical conditions. We're trying to give that gift of education to other people, and the Minnesota Cup helped us get into the papers, if you will. So yeah, it's been a phenomenal experience.
For the entrepreneurs in the room, how have you funded this, and maybe how much did you initially put in before you maybe got your first product out the door, and then how much have you raised, if you're willing to share so far?
Sure. So we put in sweat equity. Our founders each put in some financing, friends and family. When we went to Hacks, they also, as part of the program, it's a 3-month program in Shenzhen, China. They are an extension of your team with mechanical engineering, graphic design, industrial engineering, and also investment. And then from there, we took a little bit more investment through Backstage Capital, and I want to say and we also were the recently winners of the META $1 million challenge. So we took a $400K investment through META, which is the Metropolitan Economic Development Association, a nonprofit based in Minneapolis supporting minority entrepreneurs. So we've taken decent amount of funding in, although for hardware, not a lot. We've a testament to the ability of our team to be scrappy, and so yeah, we're basically kind of at the point where we're profitable and just reinvesting into the business.
So Craig, go ahead. You can ask your question.
Hello? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I have a question for Amila. I like what you're doing, and it's fascinating. I'm curious, have you guys come across any other opportunities that were undiscovered, which, track our movement?
Yeah, that's sort of where we are now, is how can we adapt the technology, and the way that we're working through that process is by what people are coming and asking us for. So people with different afflictions or treatment professionals saying, hey, can it work for XYZ? And so that's where we are at now, and that's as vague as I'm going to get with my answer. Or as specific as I'm going to get with my answer.
Peter, you're up.
Yeah, Anil, I have 2 questions for you. Number 1, is there a minimum age for this? Can I put one on my 4-year-old to help her stop sucking her thumb? And number 2, what role does the therapist or the professional play in working with your product once it's given to someone?
Yeah, so in terms of age, we've designed the product with kids in mind. So we have kids probably 8 years and up using the device, but what we are giving to a person is that level of awareness. It's still a choice. So you kind of have to be ready to make that change. You have to be willing. Just like buying a pair of sneakers or getting a gym membership is not going to help you get physically fit, right? You have to go. You have to move. You have to make the effort. So it's really about that mentality. If your 4-year-old understands, and, which God bless you if you have a 4-year-old that can get that, right? Because then that's a smart child, right? So it's really about that readiness, that willingness to change. We actually really shy away from advertising to parents, this is not a magic bullet. This is not, you're not going to put this on and your child's going to be cured, right? This is, your child's going to start to understand what's really happening, what are the triggers, and use that information to take control. But they got to be willing to do that step. And to your second question about treatment, that's exactly what we're trying to do, is we're trying to build a system for treatment professionals where they can use the product, where their patients can use the product and start to figure out what those underlying triggers are, and then really work on that with the treatment professional.
Question up here.
Question for both panelists. Anila, as far as, thanks for sharing your story. 20 years, anxiety, depression, and other issues I've been dealing with, so it's a fight, but, hang in there. We're all supporting you. As far as that goes, do you foresee in the future using nanotechnology, we could monitor people, let's say, like myself and other people, bipolar, what have you. Could you foresee that technology you're using now be upgraded, so to speak, and take care of those issues as well?
So I can't speak specifically to some of the issues that you've spoken about. Right. I think it's really about, you had mentioned before, it's not about the technology, it's about the problem and figuring out what is the right solution, right? So it may not be a wrist-worn device, it may be something completely different, but that's exactly, we were so immersed in this world of BFRBs because I grew up with it, right? So it helped us get to market very quickly because that N of 1, we knew exactly what we needed. So as we move into other technology, other disorders, we need to do the same thing. We need to do that research. We need to talk to people living with these issues, their supporters, their loved ones, their treatment professionals, to really get a handle on how is this affecting your life so that we can actually build the right solution.
Okay, excellent. And Brian, as far as South Fargo goes, are you looking to expand in, let's say, the tri-state area as well?
Well, I think in order for this to be truly successful, it has to work everywhere. It has to work in South Fargo, it has to work in western North Dakota, Wyoming, Africa, India. And so what we're doing as part of our partnership, and I talked about the ecosystem, is we're making these connections. So there's the egg launch in Tennessee, which is doing amazing things. They have a concept around the digital acre, which we can easily plug in. We have some friends from the UK that we're hosting today as well, in which we'll try to get connected. I've met with a couple of Israeli companies along with some Australian companies. So this is all about increasing the ecosystem, making it bigger. And what's important is the solutions are going to be different based off the regions, but the technology is going to drive us to those places.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Guys, so I was in Chicago yesterday, and I had a little bit of time before I had to get to the airport, and I went to the the Museum of Science and Industry, and there's a wearable exhibit going on. You probably know about it. And one of the things that I noticed that I think this is coming fast, the changes in what we can do. There was everything from a vest you can wear underneath your clothing that monitors your heart conditions, and so that could be a way to think about anxiety and things like that as well, where it's really non-intrusive. It's just something you just put on in the morning before you go out. Then there's cloth-based wearables now where you can control with just swiping your hand over your cloth. And so there's a lot of things that have come about real recently. Google's working on a project as well, Microsoft. So I think you have a lot of opportunity if you stay focused on this space. There's going to be all kinds of other ways to solve the different problems you're dealing with. So that's pretty fun to see. Sure. We have another question, I think. Did I miss it? So one for you, Brian, from Twitter. While we wait here, so we have a question that's saying, how do you, crop by crop, what are the largest hurdles that you envision? And this is maybe a hard question for non-farmer Brian to answer, but what do the innovators need to be innovating for sugar beets, for corn, for soybeans?
Well, I think the word to me is scale, right? And so you can innovate, you can do things at a small level, but the ability to think in terms of large. And that's where I think North Dakota plays to our advantage because of the size of the row crops and the things that we need to do. And so this technology needs to be geared towards those solutions. And again, it could be different based off the geography, but it has to scale at the end of the day.
All right, so you guys both know this question's coming. I think the final question for you both to answer, and we'll wrap up, is what can the community of Fargo, of North Dakota, of the people watching on the live stream, what can we do to help you move forward with your business, to help you be successful?
So I think about one of my favorite childhood books that I used to read to AJ and Quinn. It was called Stone Soup. And basically they put a stone into soup, and then the community contributed to it. So there was carrots, there was celery. That's what the Grand Farm Initiative is for me. What we just did is we put the first stone into the soup, and what we're looking for is in community engagement. There is so much talent in this region, in this area, and it's really that engagement of ideas around it. And so that's what I ask for the community, is to be involved.
I can't follow that. That's beautiful.
I had a tear right here.
A little bit, yeah. So for myself personally, it's really around this awareness of these mental health conditions. There's a lot of stigma around mental health, as we all sort of know, as we're all sort of seeing. We all deal with it. 1 in 5 Americans has some mental health issue. If you don't have one now, you're not immune. And so my ask is that you just stay open to that possibility, that it's in your life, whether if it's not you, it's someone you know, it's someone you love, and to just embrace that person with love and compassion in the same way that you would if they had cancer or diabetes or a physical health condition.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Anila, for sharing with us today.
Thank you. All right. Well, as we wrap up today, big thanks to Jake. What most people don't know about Jake is he's actually the one that initiated 1 Million Cups coming to Fargo. He was kind enough to sign a contract with the Kauffman Foundation without legal review, team review, or any of our consent, but we are very glad you did. Also, as we wrap up today, we just want to say a couple thank yous. Big thanks to the 1 Million Cups volunteer team. Specifically, we want to shout out to Roger. He's the one that greets us every day. He's part of the SCORE team. To the Emerging Prairie team, Danny and Trevor and Andrew and Darby, big thanks to you. To the sponsors that make 1 Million Cups happen. These are the folks that every single week are powering this project. Also, another thank you to Bremer. It's interesting that an organization like Bremer would bring their Twin Cities team, their innovation team, their CEO to Fargo to participate in a full week of events. And so we're grateful for that. I also want to celebrate some of the folks that are here that are the heroes of the industry. I see John Stavick here from the University of Minnesota that just launched with his students Atlan Ventures that raised $1 million to help college kids be venture capitalists in their community. Tim from the Enterprise Institute is here, who has organized angel capital funds all across South Dakota, which many of our local entrepreneurs participate with. Also here today is Cody from Annie Capital that is financing female-led ventures and so many folks. So to the out-of-town guests that choose to spend your time here, thank you. And to our local community, in the room we have publishers of newspapers, elected officials, university presidents, folks that work with our senators and our governor and our mayor. We have arts leaders in the room. We have students in the room. We have the financial industry. It truly is a community. And so thank you for showing up. I wanted to let you know next week we're going to be taking the month off next week and then the following month for 1 Million Cups off. So we'll see you back here September 4th for our out-of-town guests. It is always free when you come, but if you miss, we bill you, and it's just part of our revenue stream. So thank you in advance if you are out of town. And lastly, when we think about an effort like the Grand Farm, when we think about Anelia and her team solving a real problem, we realize entrepreneurship is a team sport. And when we think about what we can do as a region, a community, and the collaboration is our key. I think of the 30 academic folks that are powering entrepreneurial ecosystems on campus and in communities. I think about the folks that are coming from all across the country to TEDx Fargo that are connecting into our community. There is a spirit of collaboration. So to our out-of-town guests, while you're in town, we ask that when you're in Fargo, take the time to notice. Notice our makers. Notice the folks like Aaron and his team at Front Street that didn't just create a bar, they created a place for community. When you go downtown and you see the Block 9 project coming to life, you'll see innovation and energy. And we ask that all of us continue to challenge ourselves to look for the good in ideas, to power the folks that are doing it, and to believe in the power of entrepreneurship. To the Kauffman Foundation, thank you. To the Click Content Studios for live streaming, thank you. We will see you back September 4th. Thank you, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.